In the last episode of History Traveler, we were right here in Little Rock, Arkansas at the Arkansas Inland Maritime Museum looking at the story of the hero tugboat of Pearl Harbor. So here at the Maritime Museum, they have a naval vessel that was there right at the beginning of America's involvement in World War II, but they also have another vessel that was there at the end. Today, we are going to take a look at the USS Razorback, which was a World War II submarine. And not only are we going to take a look at it, well, we're going to spend the night in it. All right, well, this right here is the USS Razorback, a Ballast class World War II era submarine that I am so excited to get inside, because we're not going on just any ordinary tour. We are actually getting the opportunity to spend the night on this submarine. Now, I've covered submarine on a prior episode, but there's no way that you can get to everything. So there are a few other elements of the World War II era subs that I want to cover with the Razorback. Now, whenever you are looking at the Razorback, it may not look like a typical World War II era submarine. Well, that's because after the war, the Razorback was a part of something called the Guppy program and underwent some pretty serious changes. So it's, you notice the color is black, and the World War II era submarines had that gray color. So if we go here, they have a picture that we can look at. This is what the Razorback looked like during World War II, and you can see the conning tower there. Well, this is what it looked like after its upgrades. So with this sail, it would allow it to start its engines while being mostly submerged. It would have, I guess you could say, kind of like a snorkel. If I don't get that exactly right, submarines aren't exactly my forte, so don't roast me in the comments. But anyway, suffice it to say that the Razorback has seen some evolution in its day. Now, here's something pretty interesting that I didn't know. This is called the ship's key. Now, in order to remove the propellers, you would have to have this key. But what makes this interesting, at least to me, is that each key was unique to the submarine. So this key would not fit any other submarine. You couldn't remove propellers from any other submarine with this key, and no other key could remove a propeller from the Razorback. Yeah, just something a little different. Look, kind of interesting. What we're looking at here are the actual propellers that were removed from the Razorback. And these things, I don't know if you can really tell on camera, but my gosh, they are big. Always amazes me to think about the engineering and the craftsmanship that went into these things. Well, I don't know if we can talk about a naval vessel without talking about some of the armament. This is a 3-inch 50 caliber gun that would have been on the deck of a World War II submarine. Would have fired a 24-pound shell. They could have gone roughly about 20 rounds per minute, and maximum range was just over 8 miles. So these could be used for anti-aircraft or to fire at surface vessels. If you have ever wondered how they got torpedoes into the submarine, well, here you go. This is called the torpedo loading cradle. So you'd have about a roughly 3,500 pound torpedo that would go onto this cradle and then would go into right here into the torpedo loading hatch. And then the hatch that the crew would go in the aft part of the submarine is right here. Here's another thing that's kind of interesting that I didn't know about that I thought was worth noting. This is called a submarine marker buoy. So on all Ballast class submarines, you would have two of these, one at each end of the submarine, and it was used to signal distress while being submerged. So the buoy would float to the surface and would mark the place where the submarine was located. It would have a communications line attached to it so that a rescue vessel could communicate with the crew below, and then the cable from which the buoy was connected would go to the forward torpedo room hatch, and that would allow rescuers to send a rescue chamber down to the hatch to save the crew that was still aboard the submarine. Yeah, kind of interesting. Now, here's one thing about the Razorback that I really like, is that this submarine, maybe more than any other, has been left in the most original condition that you can possibly find. And that includes how you access the submarine. So in order to get into the Razorback, well, you have to go in just like the crew did through one of these hatches. Okay, so there's a 0% chance that I can film myself getting down into the submarine, so I've enlisted the help of my daughter. But if you were on the crew of the Razorback, well, this is one of two hatches that you would have used to get into the submarine. All right, I just got down here in our submarine, and thought that I would give you just a short home tour where we're going to be staying tonight. So this first room here that we are in, this is the forward torpedo room, and as you can see, there are bunks here. You could hold up to 16 crewmen right here, like literally above the torpedoes. So you'd have a crew of about 60 enlisted and 6 officers, more or less, on one of these submarines. And then anyway, if I go back here, well, you have 6 torpedo tubes here on the front end of the submarine, and would have an additional 10 in reserve. So 6 in the tube, 10 in reserve, total of 16 here in the forward torpedo room. Looking at these torpedo tubes is just so interesting to me. Now, with World War II torpedoes, they're not, guided by any means. So the only thing that you can really control with these torpedoes is depth, speed, and direction. So they would fire out an array of these and kind of spread them out, I guess you could say, to try and maximize their chances of hitting an enemy ship. Now, for the men in the forward torpedo room, here's the shower, so quite small. And here is the toilet, so we always get a bathroom tour. All right, now, moving forward. Hang on a second, let me get through this little door. Oh, goodness sakes. Okay, so anyway, yeah, what we're looking at here is the wardroom. So this is where the captain and the officers would eat. So there's kind of a small galley right here. They might cook food here, but most of it was in the main galley, and then they would bring it back out here to serve. But the captain would be at the head of the table. And then let's see if we continue on here. Okay, so here's the junior officers' stateroom, and you could see how their bunk would lift up to where their personal belongings could be kept inside. And then we get to the captain's room. And you know it's the captain's room because of the fancy fake wood paneling that is here. So he gets his own sink, and he gets his own room, doesn't have to share with anybody. A little bit of extra storage space, a little work area, and right across from the captain would be the executive officer's room. Okay, and he would be sharing with the chief engineer. So if there was any problem on the ship, well, the first person that the captain is going to be looking for is his executive officer. So that's why they have them right here close together. And then if we go on back, well, this is called the goat locker. So this is where the chief petty officer's quarters would have been. And I don't know why they call it the goat locker. So maybe somebody can fill me in on that. And then whenever we get to the back of this section, well, this is kind of, I guess you could say, like an office area right here. Okay, moving now out of the officer's quarters, and again, there's a little door. And moving now into the operations room. So this is literally and figuratively the center of the ship where all operations are controlled. They have a nice little illustration here that explains how a submarine dives. Notice I didn't say sinks. Sinking is a one-way trip. Diving you can bounce back from. So here is the area that we would be in right now. And then this area around here on the outer rim between the outside of the water and the inside is called the ballast. So you have water down here in the ballast, and then you have these valves. Well, whenever you want to dive, these valves come open, the ballast floods, the submarine starts to submerge until you are completely underwater, and then whenever you want to go back up, well, you just reverse the process. There's a reserve air tank here in the submarine, so you'll pump air back into the ballast, and then you go back up. Right now, one of your main objectives in a submarine is to remain undetected, of course. Well, this apparatus right here is how you dispose of your garbage on a submarine. So you'd have to get about 70 pounds, and it would go in some sort of container, and the idea is you want it to sink. So you can see they have a scale up here where they can measure the weight, but anyway, you want it to sink, because if it floats, well, that is not meeting the goal of staying undetected. Okay, and then right here we have the radio room, and again, the radio man was not allowed to send out a radio signal without the consent of the captain, because again, you don't want to get detected.
Alright, oh, dang.
No, not safe at all. Not safe at all. Okay, I can see why they don't want anybody up here. I actually do have permission, but this is the conning tower, and if we go over here, well, I'm telling you, we got some tight quarters going on in this spot, and I just bumped my dang head. But oh, dear heavens, that footage is probably going to look like garbage. But here's the periscope for the Razorback. So, like I said, very tight quarters. Oh gosh, I just bumped my head again. Very tight quarters here in this compartment. Okay, so this area right here is the galley. So this is where all of the food prep would occur. We've seen this before on another submarine. And then moving into the crew's mess, where of course you would eat the meals, and then on some of these tables you'd have either like backgammon or a chess or a checkers board, and they would also watch movies in here. So you could put up a screen and they would have a film projector and a few films that they could watch. So we're probably gonna watch a movie tonight, maybe U571 or something like that. Alright, moving right now into the main crew quarters, and in this area there would have been I think 35 beds, and obviously you have more than 35 people on here, so they would take shifts you know, bunking up, and you can see that they are 3 high. This is where we will be sleeping tonight. As a matter of fact, holy cow, like I don't even know how to how in the heck do you even get in this thing? Hang on. Ah, oh my gosh, I feel so dumb doing this. Okay, well, there you go. Let me adjust the light a little bit, and there you can see not a whole lot of space. Yeah, interesting. Okay, moving now into the forward engine room. So here is the #1 engine. There was another engine that was right here, but it was removed later on in service. And if you look behind me here, well, these 2 stainless steel barrel things, these are evaporators that will distill seawater into fresh water. So this would supply the submariners with about 1,000 gallons of water a day, but they still had to really ration out their water. You could only take a shower like once every 10 days, maybe more. So you can imagine it got pretty ripe on this thing. I've been told that you could smell a submariner whenever they got into port. And it took like a while for them to kind of get clean. The only ones who were exempt from that were the cooks. You want to keep your cooks nice and clean because they're handling the food, so they got to shower every day. What we're looking at here is a reproduction of the battle flag for the USS Razorback. So these sunburst flags right here each represent a Japanese warship that was sunk by the Razorback. The large meatball flags are large merchant ships. The smaller flags on either side are for smaller merchant ships. And then if you look at these stars, each one of those represent an airman that was rescued by the Razorback. So there were 4 B-29 pilots and 1 fighter pilot that was rescued by this vessel. And whenever you think, you know, Razorback, and of course this ship is in Little Rock, Arkansas, you might think of the hog Razorback. It's actually named after the Razorback whale. So it has nothing to do with Arkansas or the Arkansas Razorbacks. It's a whale. Okay, moving now into the aft main engine room. This is where diesel engines 3 and 4 would have been. And here there's a little bit of a cutaway so that you can see inside. And again, just the engineering and the manufacture of just an engine is a marvel to me. And then whenever you just walk through this thing and you see all of the gauges and the pipes and the fittings, and realized that somebody had to design this and then build it and then put it all together and then operate it. Pretty phenomenal. Alright, leaving the aft engine room, and I keep complaining about the little doors. They actually do serve a purpose. If one of these areas starts taking on water, well, you want to be able to seal it off so that the whole submarine doesn't take on water. Let me squeeze myself through here. And the area that I'm moving into now, again, this is all just a quick walkthrough. This is the maneuvering room. Okay, so it was right here. Let me come around this corner. Yeah. So it was right here where changes in speed would be made in response to orders from the conning tower or the bridge or the control room. So the engines don't really drive the propellers directly. It's electric generators that are attached to the engine that do that. So this is where all of that is operated from, though. All right, one more little door, and we are now in the aft torpedo room. So again, as I mentioned in another video, torpedoes could be shot or fired, I guess you could say, from the forward position or the aft. You just have to turn your submarine around. This area right here could take 1, 2, 3, 4, could take 8 torpedoes. Okay, so you would have 4 in the tubes and then an additional 4 right here in waiting. So yeah, pretty crazy. And again, bunks right here above the torpedoes to hold crew just wherever they could squeeze them in. So anyway, yeah, that's okay. So that's our walkthrough, real brief, showing where we are going to be staying tonight. Okay, so we made our way through the submarine. We ordered some pizza because we thought it would just be cool to eat pizza on a World War II submarine. It took like 2 hours to get here, but we finally have our pizza. We're already kind of digging in there. We're going to watch U-571 on this screen here, just like the sailors would whenever they were on the ship. Well, they wouldn't have watched U-571, but they would have watched movies right here in this area. And then, yeah, it's been a long day, so we're going to get some sleep and then get right back after it tomorrow. Oh, one other thing, if you ever come and stay on the Razorback, well, they have a little mini fridge here where you can bring drinks and things like that. So we were sure to get a little stock of the new Mango Mayhem, which has become my favorite flavor. One of the habits or disciplines, I guess you could say, that I have is to start off every day with reading something out of the Bible. So since I was spending the night in a submarine, I thought it might be appropriate to read something from the book of Jonah. Alright, so we got up just a little while ago. First impressions of sleeping on a submarine. It's different, that's for sure. Definitely gives me a greater degree of respect for the men who served on these submarines. I mean, if you look here, the space between the pillow and whatever that is not very much. So these guys did get a little bit of extra pay for serving on a submarine, and I would say that they definitely earned it. All right, well, that was the USS Razorback right here at the Arkansas Inland Maritime Museum. One thing I don't think that I mentioned is that the Razorback was one of 12 submarines to be present in Tokyo Bay at the Japanese surrender. So you can come to this place here in Little Rock. You can see the USS Hoga, which was at Pearl Harbor. You can see the Razorback, which was at Tokyo Bay at the surrender, and really see two ships that cover the whole span of World War II. And you can actually stay in the sub and kind of immerse yourself in the history of World War II and the experience of the submariners. Really enjoyed myself over the past few days here. So anyway, if you're ever in Little Rock, definitely stop at this place, whether you spend the night or not. It is worth stopping by to learn a little bit more about the history of World War II.